This is the Get Vocal podcast.
Great when it comes to kind of dealing with mental health.
But it's funny you should say that, because like the first time I saw the doctor about mine, she was like, "You need to up your exercise more," and I'm thinking, and I quote the words because I can hear him clear as day. She's like, "If you just walk 30 minutes a day, you'll feel a lot better in 3 weeks' time." I'm thinking, I already play football 3 times a week, and I still feel like this. Just walk 30 minutes a day, and like your dad was being told in the 80s, go and do yoga.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. It was never taken seriously enough at that time. It was kind of just go and do yoga.
Now
It'll
it's
be fine.
massive.
Whereas now they're kind of like, well, do you want this medication, or this support groups like Get Vocal, or the support like there's all support
Community
around,
interventions and stuff.
it.
I mean, in all fairness to the doctor, when my dad went, they prescribed him with meds, and that was one of the additional things. But so many do get batted off with, you need to exercise, eat a bit better, which is all true. We know that, but most people walking through the doors of the doctors have done that.
Yeah.
I'd done all that, and she could see it on my face. I burst out crying in the doctors, burst out crying at work. I had a full-on kind of breakdown, and as soon as she saw my face, she was like, "Right, what I think we need to do is we need to sign you off work." So most people, the vast majority of people, if they're walking through the doors of the doctors, especially men, it's because they need something.
Yeah.
And they need it now. And
Because they'll wait and wait.
and that is potentially medication, potentially counselling, potentially referrals to community interventions and stuff. But they need something. They need reassurance that it's going to be all right. And they need connection with something or somebody, and potentially medication. I went on citalopram, and fortunately, I've just managed, well, not fortunately, because that makes it sound like I don't want to be on them, but I've managed to just taper off this last 2 months.
Okay.
That's 3.5, nearly 4 years of taking medication. And actually, up until 6 months ago, I didn't actually want to come off at all. I thought, if this is going to keep me where I'm at now, sane, straight, with enough room in my mind to think, I'm just going to keep taking them. It's a tablet in the morning. So what? Which is kind of my dad's mantra. That was always his mantra. It's a tablet in the morning with my morning cup of tea. I don't notice it. And if it helps me stay sane, who cares? And that was the kind of conversation that we'd have growing up. So when it came for me to have medication, it was like, well, so what? Never did my dad any harm. Although some other people might disagree with that. It's character. Shout out to you, Dad. Very proud of you.
Love it. I'm interested to know in terms of like, so you're saying, so obviously medication, things like that, but what are the main things in your life that bring you those high moments? So let's say, for example, you are feeling a little bit low. You are, because you're going to go through periods where you feel like that. What are the main things to you that lift you back up again? What is it for you then?
I mean, it's going to sound like it's coming straight off a leaflet, this, but exercise, going to the gym, but not necessarily
30 minutes,
30 minutes, not necessarily.
I saw your box on Instagram.
Yeah,
pretty handy, I've seen it.
No, don't say that.
There was no one there though. No. It was just you.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy when the punch bag doesn't hit your back. But going to the gym, but also going to the gym with other people.
Yeah, massive.
So there's a group of us that go in the morning, and it's the banter, the kind of camaraderie is equally as good as the exercise, I would say.
Yeah.
And you get into this groove of like being there for each other, and just like you guys when you're walking, you just in between you sort of exercise, you're having a sip of water, and you just chat, and I'll say, oh, work's doing me head in, blah blah blah, and it's like, oh, blah. And you just sort of those little moments of release as well as exercising, brilliant. So that's one of them. Music, listening to music, walking, spending time with the kids, getting rid of my phone, which my missus will probably say, well, it's never out your hand, so that's a lie. But occasionally, I'll like delete social media apps for a few, even if it's just a few days.
It's a lot more common now.
Just to clear my head, try and be in the present moment, stop spending time in the future or worrying about the past, and just be right there in the moment with my kids.
Yeah.
Or even watching a TV programme. I left my phone on charge downstairs the other day, and I watched an episode. We've been watching Jack Ryan, and I watched an episode, and I was like, that was mint, that episode. And my missus was like, well, it's just as good as the others. Like, it's because I've not been checking my phone.
Yeah. You were there watching.
I was in the moment, and I know it's only a tiny little thing, but they're probably my three main things: gym, walking, and listening to music, and then being in the present moment and getting rid of like phones and other things like that, and just trying to spend time.
They're all massive things, aren't they? I think that exercise is the first one. I think what's probably changed over the last 10 10 years maybe, let's say, that people would do that, as in like have the banter with the mates, or you know, even where we are right now, like people will come here and do exactly the same thing around football, and doing that, but then the habits around that are completely different. So it might involve drinking, drugs, maybe, you know, bad habits. Whereas I think what's changed a lot now is people are doing that same thing, talking about how's work, blah blah, but like I said, we were walking
in a more positive environment.
Yeah, and that's changed a lot.
And it's really hard because growing up as a young man in Blackpool, you're introduced to a certain type of masculinity very, very early.
Yeah.
I can remember being 7, 8 years old on the way to here, actually.
Yeah.
And we'd stop off at the bookies, and I'd wait outside the bookies whilst my brother went in and got a coupon, and then he'd come out, and we'd be chatting about the teams and what bets he was going to select, and then he'd do that. And then the next bookies, he'd go in, put his bets on, and then I'd stop outside the Bloomfield while he went in for a few. He'd come out with a packet of crisps and a Coke, and I'd sit outside, and he'd have a few pints, and then we'd kind of come on and sit or stand in the South Paddock, and people were smoking and drinking, and that was what was being a lad was. And it's kind of, you have to behave a certain way in relationships, you have to fight, you have to be able to look after yourself, you have to, you know, drink. If you're going to be a lad, you've got to drink. You know, you've got to gamble. Yeah, pretty much.
Get busy.
And all that. Well, by the time you're 15, that's cemented as for a lot of young
100%.
men. That's what being a lad is.
Yeah.
And it's only when you get probably into your 20s where you think, hang on a minute, being a lad is expensive for a start, but also it's actually ruining my mind. You know, it's making me full of feelings that I don't really like, self-loathing and you know, guilt and regret, and going out the weekend and then, you know, kind of being very, very impulsive, and then, you know, waking up on the Monday and being like, oh my God, what have I done? And a lot of that gravitates around places like football and stuff. So this idea of masculinity is a really important issue, I think, because it's important to get those conversations going early. And I do think the younger generation who are at school now are a little bit more savvy to, you know, gender expectations and this kind of thing, that it's quite fluid. You know, men don't have to be a certain mould and women don't have to fit.
It's a lot different now.
It's a lot different now, but how many have already gone through that kind of phase? How many generations? So it's our generation, it's a generation above, and the generation above that, potentially a generation below us. That's a lot of people, a lot of men, and we know.
Do you see like in your group of friends? I mean, it's something that we've noticed, and we recorded our first podcast probably 2 years ago, and we had 3 or 4 people message us going, "That's just changed everything. Thank you very much. I can speak now." Do you see it, the effect that you have on your group of friends? Do they say, "I really resonated about Nathan. I'm ready to talk now"? Or "Have you got a minute? Do you want to go for a walk? Or do you want to go for a beer?" Or are they a lot more open with you? Or is it just... With
regards to my close group of friends, we've always been quite open with each other. Some of them might have needed a couple of pints before they kind of loosened up a little bit, but we've kind of always been quite open with each other. Me probably more so, because I'm quite a sensitive, like, you know, soul. So I'd be just quite open, heart on the sleeve kind of thing. But beyond my initial closer circle of friends, there's been a few people that have contacted me and said, "Can I talk to you about going to the doctors? And I never knew that about you. And I'd like to kind of pick that up another time if that's all right." And then we'd kind of chat the next time I saw him. And it's the kind of being apologetic about it, which we do, don't we? Look, oh, sorry, I don't mean to kind of take any much of your time, but I just wanted to oh, sorry, I didn't mean to be, oh, sorry, I feel like I've just kind of exposed, you know, my kind of life to you. And it's like, stop apologising for kind of talking openly about what's going on inside your mind, because, you know, most people will happily listen to what you've got to say, and they might not have the solution. They might not, and often I think when we talk, we don't want solutions. We just want someone to nod and go.
Because when you listen to yourself, sometimes you'll have conversations with someone, you listen to yourself, and even listening to what you're saying helps you figure it out in your own head.
Well, it never seems as big, does it?
No.
When you say it out loud, and that's another thing you probably apologise. Sorry, it probably seems like nothing. But in there, it feels like the weight of the world, and I think that's the phenomenon that we'll maybe never figure out, but we need to accept and be aware of that. In there, it's dangerous. Out there, takes the power away.
Just about to say, it's mental. So like during lockdown, I really struggled, and my wife said to me, like, start writing stuff down that is making you feel down.
Yeah.
And when you start writing on a piece of paper, you kind of go, I can sort that out tomorrow. That's actually not such a big issue.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, I'm not going to be gigging because everywhere's shut and all this stuff. And then what she'd say to do is she'd like write down a gratuity list. What are you grateful for? And then what she'd do is write the negative ones, throw it in the bin.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's such like seems so simple, but it's such a big thing.
Yeah. I think doing it in a tangible way where it's things you can touch and feel and see, right? Because you could do that in your head.
Yeah.
But
you
my
can't
word,
bin it in your head, can you?
that list of things that you're worried about would feel so much worse in your head than it would on a piece of paper. And when you compare that to things like, so you've got your list of worries and you've got your things that are grateful for. What do you want to be? Where do you want to go? How do you want to be remembered? What do you want to achieve in life? Most of the things that you're worried about won't be anywhere, even on the same kind of page as the things that you want out of life. And so are they really that important? Are they really that
What's
important?
What's that for you?
Yeah. What do I want to be? I think I want to be a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good brother. And, that's the elite level. And then kind of championship level is, if I can kick on in this kind of world that I'm in at the minute with regards to spoken word and literacy. And as I say, keep supporting and promoting and engaging with people to kind of recognise the power of storytelling and be able to vocalise their thoughts and feelings and experiences. If I can keep doing that and maybe inspire other people to keep, to kind of pursue.
So you've got like number one priorities, haven't you? Then you've got like things that are, the most important things are like family, those things closest to you. And then the second one is more, it's almost, have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that you're top of the list there, and then obviously you're going through the list there, and there's more influence, all those kind of needs that you've got there. Where do you feel like you're at with it?
So I think...
do you feel like you're at that championship level?
Somebody asked me the other day. Yeah, bad reference really. That I know.
League One. It's League One, boys.
Yeah, so somebody asked me about what define as successful, and I was trying to rattle my brain thinking, of this aspiration of success, and I was thinking, I work for myself. Look, I could be a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
People say all the time, "Oh, you're doing well, aren't you?"
Yeah.
I felt like saying, "You want to see my bank balance?" It could be better. It
could always be better.
But I'm only a year or so into my own business. These things take time, so I'm well aware of that. But I work for myself. I do, every day is different, and I love what I do. I've got a beautiful family where I've got two lovely boys who are happy. We've got a roof over our heads. And we've just booked a holiday, and if you can go on holiday, then that's great, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I thought actually that's success.
Yeah, it is.
And of course I could listen. I've got a Citroen C4. Would I want to swap that for something else? Of course I would. So there's room to grow and become more successful.
Does that make you hungry for more?
Yeah, of course it does.
You've got to that level
and I want more comfort. Of course I do. I think everybody does, but I think I'd rather drive around in a Citroen C4 and know that I've helped a group of 14-year-olds feel more confident about themselves and their aspirations than not do that and have, I don't know, a flash Range Rover or something.
Yeah, because the materialistic things are finite, aren't they? In terms of like, there's a lot of studies and research that have gone into, once you get past a certain bank balance, that your happiness doesn't actually grow anymore.
Yeah, I can't imagine it.
It's not about that. It's like what you actual need. So you're feeling so much more fulfilled doing what you're doing right now
than
you ever have done, and you've still got room to grow. Which
keeps the hunger, and I kind of think, I want more comfort. I want to do the garden. I want a nice garden that my kids can play in, and it's things like that.
If you're a gardener.
Yeah. Did I say Range Rover loud? Yeah. But, there's things that I want, of course I do, but they're personal desires. They're not fulfillment and success as I would, if somebody forced me to define it. My version of success would be to be happy with my family, comfortable, doing what I love, and I'm kind of already there.
Yeah.
And now it's about growing it and keeping it going and building it, and maybe ticking a few of them things off the list that I've just described.
The garden.
Yeah, the garden. Maybe more consistent holidays would be nice.
Yeah,
we got to Portugal, first time going abroad in like 4 years for a holiday.
Nice.
So that, that's a real kind of like, yes, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And more of them would be handy.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's ways and means, and I could have sat down and said, Rolex and all that stuff, but actually, I've got a £10 Casio on.
But them items don't mean anything if you haven't got in a sanctum, like in a piece.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that for me, like this is, we use a word, I think it's kind of a phrase, it's kind of a bit simple, but emotional intelligence. And when I had no idea about what emotional intelligence was, when I spoke to the doctor, she was like, you've got this unachievable level of happiness. You always want more.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a single child growing up, and I was looked after. My parents always give me what I want, but I always wanted more.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to the doctor, I think it was about 21, and she was like, it's because you've got this mental thing that's like, if you gave you the sun, you'd want the moon.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big things, especially around here as well. It's like, you're never really happy for what you've got.
Yeah.
So when you actually take it all back and you actually, like, gratuity lists,
Yeah.
and you look at it and you go, I don't need all this.
Yeah.
I'm happy with what I've got.
Yeah.
But yeah. What's next? All right, let's.
I was going to ask that.
Let's. What's next for Nathan Parker? Come on. What's the big plan?
I'm working on 2 books at the minute. One book is a poetry book for teenagers, which is called Words for Whatever.
Nice.
And that is issue-based poetry. So really exploring kind of, I guess, teenage issues, mental health, identity, peer pressure, even things kind of a bit broader, sexuality, refugees, kind of just topical things that'll be on, the agenda of teens in Blackpool and beyond, and doing it through poetry. So great introduction to poetry, but also great discussion tool for teenagers, teachers, PSHE, whatever that might be. Because I've found through doing a lot of school visits, there's a lot of poetry for children, there's a lot of poetry for adults. There's not much that I can find that's consistently there for teenagers to get their teeth stuck into. And a lot of the stuff I do, it relates to a lot of teenage issues, but actually it's spoken through the eyes of a 36-year-old man. So it's still not the right, kind of tone or it's not quite as relevant as it could be. So I'm working on that. That's not far off, actually. I've got some students at Unity, which is my old school, and the head of English who's actually Brett's wife, that are going to read it and give me a bit of feedback on it before I kind of go on and look to get it. But I'm going to actually self-publish it again. Yeah. Because I'm kind of like, there's still part of me nagging, being like, oh no, but still not managed to bag yourself a publishing deal, have you? But then the other part of me is like, but it's worked so far, so I haven't
What's
really
the
got...
difference? I don't know the difference
Yeah,
in between.
I'm glad you said this, because I was going to ask you off camera, but...
What is as in what does that mean for you to do that?
So I haven't got a publishing house behind me.
Right, okay.
So my first book, I uploaded the manuscript to Amazon and a PDF for the front cover, and they basically, in 48 hours, it's available to buy on Amazon. So it could be a load of rubbish. Thankfully it wasn't, but it could be. And that's why self-publishing gets quite a lot of bad press, because there's no really quality assurance.
Right.
But I'm not being funny, I've read some books that are absolutely terrible, and someone's okayed them.
Yeah.
So it's not the kind of bit, I always...
So you're not having to be credited by someone else? Is that
it's this waiting for permission. Somebody to say, I'm going to give you a publishing deal. Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank
Do
you.
it anyway.
And there was a report that, I don't know, it was 2022, there's 80,000 books published around the world, and 50% of them sold less than a dozen. Like, what? So you think getting a publishing deal is going to be yes, that's it, top shelf for Tesco, it's it.
But you've got an influence in terms of where you don't need that, do you? I guess because you are locally influencing so many people.
If there are any publishers listening, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind.
I want some more holidays to Portugal, please.
Because when you self-publish, you have to do everything yourself. You have to write it, edit it, format it, promote it. Or potentially print it if you don't work through somebody like Amazon which is a bit like a hybrid thing. They print and ship and deal with all that, and then you get sort of paid royalties. With my poetry book, Scribbles from the Seaside, I did that independently. Worked with a local artist, Grumpy Girl Graphics, shout out Becky, and she turned my poetry into something that was also very visual. And I printed that at a local printers in Blackpool and went and got 300 copies, printed off. They've all sold out, so it's limited edition. I'm not doing another run of them. Yeah. But that was all me. I controlled that whole thing. So that's that kind of self-publishing. Then there's like the hybrid version where you use a kind of a platform like Amazon. There's loads of places that'll do it for you. There's also places where you can that are disguised as publishers, but you essentially have to pay them to publish your book.
Right.
That's a little bit kind of a grey area for me, because not all of those, not some are great, some are absolutely fantastic and provide a really, really great experience for authors. Some not so much.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously the full-blown getting yourself an agent and getting yourself a publishing deal, where a publishing house will do it all. Then you write it, give it them, they edit it, print it, promote it, and all that sort of stuff. And there's varying levels to that of how much promotion you get and how much support you get.
Yeah,
and the editing process, you might have an editor that strongly disagrees with an element of your work.
Tells you to change it or...
Yeah. I mean, when I was shortlisted for Lancashire Book of the Year, it was alongside an amazing author called Siobhan Curran. She's based in Brighton, and she told a story about how her editor said, don't you think that scene's a bit unrealistic? And it was a teenage girl who was fretting because they only had one school shirt and it got dirty and she didn't have enough time to wash it. And she was fretting because what was she supposed to do? School would go mad, blah, blah, blah. Don't you think that's a little bit unrealistic that the teenager's only got one school shirt? And she's like, well, no, because that was me.
Real life.
And it's like millions of other kids across the country that have only got one school shirt. So it's this detachment potentially that you might have with an editor. So there's loads of ways that you can get your work out there, which maybe weren't around a long time ago. The further up the chain you get in terms of publishing, kind of getting the big publishing deal, the longer it's probably going to take.
Yeah.
And at the minute, I just want to get a poetry book for teenagers done and out there, because it's a vehicle to enable me to get out to schools and work with young people on poetry and get them thinking and expressing themselves. And that's ultimately the priority, not whether I've got so-and-so press on the back cover.
Yeah.
So, I've got that going on. I've got a children's novel as well that's aimed at 10 to 14-year-olds. I do a lot of work in primary schools, and my novels are 13 plus, and they're quite gritty.
Yeah.
So when I'm in a primary school, I'm like, I've got these books, but you can't read them.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like the Grinch who stole books. So I'm working on a novel, really pushing myself to write for a younger audience, but I'm loving that as well at the minute. And obviously more gigging and performing and all that sort of stuff.
Are you going to try and make that gritty but with a light-hearted twist, or are you going to go airy, fluffy kind of...
I toyed with the idea of doing time-travelling pirates, but as I was writing it, I was like, I'm just not feeling it, I think the premise was great. I just don't think I'm the right person to write it. So I am kind of pulling on a little bit of grit.
Yeah.
And it's about a school trip to an island that is, not as straightforward as you think, and they're going on this resi where they're kind of expecting to do rock climbing and canoeing. One of the kids goes missing, and it's about the friendship group trying to get to the bottom of where this kid is that's gone missing on this island where there's no signal, and it's all a bit kind of weird and mysterious.
Have you seen Stranger Things?
I have seen Stranger Things, yeah. I have seen Stranger Things, yeah. Although I have.
There's the inspiration.
Yeah, do you know what? I haven't made the connection there. Probably because there's no Demogorgon or whatever. Yeah, is that what it is? Yeah, okay. Pulling it out the back there. So they're the two things that I'm working on at the minute, but I've got kind of, I guess, a consistent line of like gigs where I go performing.
Don't you? By the Meter. Is it
By the Meter? Yeah, our local spoken word show, which is amazing. And I'm not just saying that because I'm one of the hosts, but the best thing to come out of that is this community of people that didn't know they liked poetry, a bit like me, that come and go, wow, this is blowing my mind. That person's just said exactly how I feel about whatever, grief, mental health, politics, kind of whatever. And we've got this real kind of buzzing community that comes to the nights at Bootleg, and the next one's on the 10th of August. And we've got a great lineup of poets from across the north, and I host. So that's one of the things that's kind of consistently in the diary. But yeah, different gigs. Got a gig next week in Manchester, Poet on the Roof, which is poetry on a rooftop. Who'd have thought? With music and a DJ and a few drinks, and that's an amazing night as well. With my mate Lenny from Manchester, who again I met through him seeing a post that I'd put out on social media, connected, went and met him. We hit it off like that, and we've become really, really good friends. We put on some killer events over the last sort of 2 years, and that would have never happened if I didn't kind of make that kind of step to put myself out there.
Going back to it, it's just that first jump. It's the thing that changes everyone's life. It's the first jump. You're like, if you never quit your job, or if someone never came to the Get Vocal session, or if we never started a podcast, or it's everything goes back to that first initial leap that goes, okay, we're fine.
Yeah,
and I think that's just incredible.
And there's a lot of doors that are closed to us. We know that we're not daft. We know from a town like Blackpool, you can't just walk up and just take a step straight into kind of a lucrative kind of opportunity. But there are a lot more doors that are open than you think. But we don't try them. We don't try the handle. And I think what I've found is that if you do try the handle, some will open, and when they open, there's often great people behind there, that are into the same things as us, that speak the same language as us, that share the same values as us. And to quote my man Lenny, actually, when good people come together, we often create. And that's what happens. And I think finding your people and finding your thing, whatever that is, I mean, obviously, I'm talking about poetry and novels. People might be sat listening to it thinking, it's really not my thing, mate. But you'll have a thing. You'll have a thing, whatever that thing is, go for it. Whatever you're passionate about or interested in, just take a step forward and give it a go, because more often than not, you'll think, oh, that went better than I thought. Actually, that wasn't a total disaster, and I've learned something from it. I'll take the next step.
And then so on, And I mean, I was going to say, like, just to start wrapping it up, is there anything that you want to leave us with? I don't know whether that's it. That's powerful.
That is a great ending. But I have one question to ask you.
Go.
One last question, and we're done. If you met yourself from 20 years ago, what would you tell that person?
It's all going to be all right.
I love it.
Nice.
The simplicity.
Nice.
It's all going to be all right. Just don't stress.
That's it.
Fair point.
That is it.
That's maybe all you needed to hear then at the time.
Everything's going to be all right. Just stop stressing, be in the moment, trust yourself. It's going to be fine.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. Well, I think it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. No,
and
I really enjoyed
chatting.
That
towards the end was amazing. So hopefully you've enjoyed it.
I have. I loved it. Thank you for asking me. It's a real honour.
Yeah. So thank you very much for listening. This has been the Get Vocal podcast with Nathan Parker. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, enjoyed what you've listened to, go and subscribe so the latest episodes are in your inbox.
Take care, guys. See you soon.